My last question today is from Garrett. Garrett says, I'm looking to start investing money for my future. I'm a young adult. I don't study finance, so my idea would be just to invest in index funds. I've talked on this program about investing in index funds rather than timing the market or picking specific stocks. And Garrett goes on to say, for example, the S&P 500 index fund. These funds are safe, they perform well, they invest in a broad list of companies. However, many people would rather not support some of the companies on those lists. For example, Halliburton. Is investing in the S&P 500 logical and ethical and moral, knowing that Halliburton and similar companies are in there? If it's unethical, what should progressive-minded individuals do in terms of investments? This is a really good question. Remember, only about half of Americans own any stocks at all. And of that half that do, the vast majority is concentrated at the very top, okay? Nevertheless, this is an important consideration. I will be completely upfront, and I have said this before. I mostly invest in broad-based index funds, the S&P 500, and even way broader funds, a total stock market index, which invests in as much of the entire stock market as possible. I recognize that fractions of my investment are going to companies that I would not want to support. And to be honest, I really don't feel that great about it. Unfortunately, I've not found any logical way to tell myself that I'm going to, picking individual stocks, I don't think is a good idea, speaking not as your financial advisor, but just someone who has an MBA in financial planning. Most people do not do better than the broader market over a long period of term by picking individual stocks. If you're trading very actively, it requires a lot of time, and you have to evaluate how much is your time worth, in addition to the fact that you are also going to have short-term trading taxes and fees imposed on you. So I believe in long-term broad investing. Unfortunately, it is a reality that not every company that mutual funds invest in will be completely ethical. There are some mutual funds that tout we invest only in green, ethical, socially responsible companies. I've looked into some, and the issues I've had with those are that they have very, very high fees. If you look at some of the yearly maintenance fees on actively managed mutual funds, they could be as high as 1 or 2% or even more of the profits. We talk about hedge funds, all of this stuff. The actively managed funds can have very high fees. And over the long term, if you want to talk about compounding interest, you're going to have the most money to compound over the long term if you reduce your costs as much as possible. So it's a tough thing, Lewis, and I don't love the fact that some of the mutual funds I own hold shares in companies I don't like.
Right. And the morality of it is totally subjective. I mean, for me personally, if I were to invest what I would consider to be a relatively small amount of money into one of these indexed funds, of course, I would know that it was only a tiny fraction of what I'm investing that would be, it would be these nasty companies. But even in that case, I mean, that tiny bit of your investment, I mean, how does that really affect that company? I mean, it's even more minuscule when you put it into perspective that way.
Well, that's you're kind of rationalizing based on scale, which
that's it. But I know, but that's part of it. I mean, that's why I say the morality of it is completely subjective, because that would not bother me knowing that I'm not, I'm not a big part of the problem. But you have to ask yourself if that would bother you.
There's another way to rationalize it if we're looking for rationalizations, which is by reducing my costs and not putting too much time now into what my investments are, I'm going to have more money in the future, in my retirement, to do good with. The financial freedom that I will have will allow me to further progressive causes as a result of having invested in an intelligent way. That's another way to rationalize it. And I know it doesn't appeal to everyone. It doesn't fully appeal to me either, but I'm just kind of thinking extemporaneously of how such investments might be rationalized by progressive-minded individuals.
Yeah, I think, the bottom line here is that if this is a wise investment that's going to help you and your family in the future, just do it.
Yeah, although, remember, Lewis, we could find many situations where applied to individual companies, that would be a terrible logic, right? Listen, hey, investing right now in this oil company is going to give me a lot of money, and it's going to give me a lot of money to leave my family, that's really good. Well, hold on a second. What are the social costs of putting more money into fossil fuels? What are the environmental costs? What about the costs for not my children and grandchildren, but what about my great-great-great-grandchildren if we don't get off of these fossil fuels? I don't know that I like that kind of selfish idea to its full end.
I agree. I agree with you on that if we're talking about individual companies. But I'm just talking about these index funds. If so I don't know. But like I said, just evaluate it yourself. Maybe you don't agree with us.
Send me your thoughts on this. I am very curious what our audience thinks about this. I assume there is going to be a pretty big split amongst our audience as to what they see as the right decision on something like this. That's it for this Friday show. We will talk to you on the bonus show. See you then.